Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Hiya, I'm okay. Cheers. Good to catch up with you this evening. Thanks.
Yeah, here with Steve
Good
Evans.
to meet you. Yep, sorry. Good to meet you, Andrew. How's
Hi, Steve.
how's life in dreary Aldershot? Or you're in Southampton at the moment?
I'm in Southampton.
I know the place
near
fairly well.
Aldershot, and I moved a whole 50 miles halfway through my life to date to Southampton. I've always lived in Hampshire. So yes, it's okay. Yes, not too bad.
Yeah.
Nothing exciting,
I remember
but it's okay.
I remember it well from my army days, actually, and I just could never wait to get out of Aldershot, to be honest, because it was always full of squaddies. Obviously, I was never in Aldershot, but I was just up the road, you know. And I've been to Southampton a few times this year as well. I quite like it there, really lovely. Yeah.
It's nice. Actually, the city centre is really not quite nice for a city. It's really, there's loads of parks and stuff, and it does look. It's not like, it's a nice place to live.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a buying club for Liverpool FC, or it has been traditionally, hasn't it? Southampton. We bought loads of great players from Southampton. Are you a Southampton supporter, Andrew?
Sadly not, because I was born in Aldershot in the home counties. That makes me a Manchester United supporter.
Really? Whoa. My uncle was the manager of Aldershot. We talked about this. Mentioned it last time.
Yeah, Jim Amelia, wasn't it? Yeah. Because I can remember him managing Brighton when they reached the FA Cup
against Man United.
In 1983. Actually, I did check. Yeah, I think he stopped being manager of Aldershot in '72, which was just before. I think that was just before my time. Actually, my first ever football match I went to was an Aldershot game in 1974.
Oh yeah.
I take it you're still working with the NHS first and foremost, yeah?
I am, yes.
What's your role within the NHS then?
I work on something called evidence-based interventions. Huh? Basically, there's a range. Have you heard about these?
No.
Don't worry, they've got various names. Basically, there's a range of procedures like hip replacements, knee replacements, various back treatments, things on carpal tunnel and trigger finger on your hand, shoulders, and there's a whole range of things which are considered lower priority than other stuff. So before, up to like a dozen years ago, like your doctor could just say, "Oh yes, they need a hip replacement, send them to hospital, get it done." Now, basically, people have to meet a criteria to have these treatments done. And unfortunately, people talk about it as the NHS postcode lottery. Basically, each area has its own criteria. So with the latest reorganisation of the NHS this year, there's 42 integrated care boards and integrated care systems. It all gets very complicated. But basically, each of these 42 regional little mini NHSs has different criteria, and I work for one of the organisations that's basically got the we're part of the mainstream NHS, but we're a bit of a tangent. So basically, we're called a commissioning support unit. We originally set up to provide like finance, legal, contracts type stuff for the clinical commissioning groups. But the clinical commissioning groups has now merged into the integrated care board.
Yeah, they're all gone now. Yeah.
So basically, so the team I work with, most of us aren't clinical, but basically we get reams of patient information sent to us with doctors' letters saying basically why they think people meet this criteria, and we have to judge them whether they do or not and ask the relevant questions if it's not clear. So that's more or less what I do, which I've been doing for 4 years, and before that I was in another NHS role in finance.
Okay, so do you still have input into like CCGs used to have input into how much money various trusts got? Is that still the case with these integrated care support boards?
The idea is that the CCGs and the hospital trusts, and also various private sector private sector hospitals that have got contracts within an area. The idea is that they all basically work together in a more aligned process. So before, when the CCG would basically agree a contract with a hospital that, you know, you will treat our X million patients and we will pay you Y million pounds per year. The idea is it's supposed to simplify it because they're working in closer alignment. The skeptics, of which I'm one, thinks it's just another stage in Tory privatisation, because they're actually saying now, for the first time ever, private health representatives of private health companies can actually sit on local health boards, be involved in decision making. And we just feel, I personally feel that the Tories have just fragmented and privatised the NHS. Obviously, it began with Thatcher, but it's obviously sped up a lot since the 2012 reorganisation. And I just think the system gets more and more complicated. More and more patients don't quite understand the system because they're having to deal with several different bodies. Different parts of the health system are having to compete against each other. And basically, I know I shouldn't say this, but well, I have said this even where I work. I mean, naturally, billions of pounds goes into administering all this. I mean, I don't necessarily need some of the roles I've done. I don't necessarily think they even needed to exist. I'm sure they could, the NHS could probably find something more productive for me to do, but we are where we are. We have a system. I mean, the only thing I can say is that I'm very acutely conscious there is a patient at the end of the process, and we have to apply the rules fairly, but I like to think that I will always ask the questions of doctors to actually tease out the information we need to say yes. When the doctors don't send these cases to us because they don't think they should be done. It's a question of just making sure that we actually get the right information, really.
Yeah.
So it can be a
political,
frustrating process, but also a rewarding process. You do feel indirectly, obviously, you don't meet the patients, you just see their paperwork, that you are actually helping part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All very political.
Sounds like, yeah. On your Twitter profile, it showed you an image of a book, your 2015 book. Why not trust the Tories? Do you think you're going to be adding a couple of updates to that? Recent events.
Yes, yeah, that's what I occasionally say. Why not trust the Tories? There are so many reasons.
How about changing the title? What about?
Sorry?
Why not change the title? Why not trust the Tories?
Oh, you beat me to it. I was going to say, why not trust?
Very, very topical, but I suspect that she'll be, well, obviously she'll be gone as Prime Minister next week, and I don't know. I was speculating whether she'll want to stay as an MP or whether she'll want to join Boris Johnson on the after dinner speaking circuit. But apparently Boris Johnson now thinks it's time for his comeback. I can't see that happening.
Yeah.
But basically, this book I've been writing throughout my adult life. This was the first book I ever tried, and I self-published it back in 1989.
Okay.
With the title "History of the Conservative Party." And then I did a rewrite in 2015 as Why Not Trust the Conservatives. And then I changed it again. I did an update last year, which I changed again to Why Not Trust the Tories. The specific reason being that back in 1944, an R.M. Bevan wrote a book called Why Not Trust the Tories, which I think is one of the great forgotten books of British politics. I don't know, are either of you aware of it?
I'm aware of him, but not so much his book, no.
No, myself included, yeah.
It won't mean much, but I can wave my 1944 hardback copy. It's only about 90 pages long.
Okay.
And what he did was, the end of the Second World War was approaching, and he warned people, do not fall for what the Tories did at the end of the First World War. This homes for heroes and everything will be better. Yeah. And it was the story of sort of the betrayal of the miners and the defeat of the general strike, and then looking into even in the Second World War, when the Beveridge report came out and sort of like pointing towards the welfare state, even then the Tory answer was, we'll have to delay it after the war, but then we'll have to water down the proposals and stuff. So basically that's where the inspiration for the title came from. And the information came from I've always read loads of politics books anyway, just reading loads of political books and pulling out a bit lots of factual information and then putting my interpretation on it. My interpretation being that the Conservative Party has always been the party of the rich and the powerful, and their main thrust is to keep the rich and powerful rich and powerful. I don't buy into this compassionate conservatism stuff that Jeremy Hunt and Liz Truss have been plugging in the last few days, or any of the other things that Cameron we're all in it together.
No.
I don't trust any of it.
Yeah. Did you try and get this book published through a publisher, or did you just decide you were going to self-publish anyway? Did you go down that route at all, and did you have any joy?
When I first wrote the book, I approached lots of publishers. I did get some publishers interested, but then most of them said people who want to read a book about the Conservative Party are probably sympathetic to the Conservative Party, would be interested in reading the critical
Fair enough.
approach.
Yeah.
So so I self-published it originally, and then self-published the updates. I've had a couple of football books published by the traditional route.
Oh yeah. United book.
Sorry?
There's a couple. I'm looking now. You've got Planet Football, the World Cup, Europe United. There's quite a few there.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So the World Cup book that came out in 1990, and that was done by a traditional publisher. It's a history of the World Cup from 1930 through to 1990. It's like massive thing, like 500 pages, like stacked on every single World Cup game and stuff. Unfortunately, that publisher, they went into liquidation a couple of years later. The Europe United one, which came out in 2005, marked the 50th anniversary of the European Cup / Champions League. I may have a copy here, which may have some Liverpool interest for you. You may like the front cover picture.
Oh yeah, we like that.
Yeah.
Istanbul. Yeah.
Sorry?
Istanbul, is that?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So that came out, so that marked the 50th anniversary of the Champions League. And that was done by a company called Sports Books, which they've been going for a long time. They do a variety of sporting books, would you believe? They had a contract for many years. There's an athletics equivalent of Wisden and the Rossman Sky Sports Football Yearbook, like an athletics equivalent, which they published for many years. So that got published by them. It sold fairly decently and got some really good reviews, but they decided it hadn't sold well enough to warrant an update, unfortunately.
Can you republish that, self-publish it yourself?
Sorry?
Can you publish that yourself?
I can. Well, yeah, I mean, I have thought about it over the years. I think the problem, because it's really lovely hardback with colour pictures and stuff. It's not the sort of thing that you can easily do self-published unless you've got a rather nice budget.
Yeah, it's a bit expensive, wouldn't it, with the colour images?
The other thing is that it's like 220 odd pages but obviously with the way that the Champions League expanded with more and more teams and stuff, and more group stages and rounds and stuff, you'd end up needing hundreds of pages to do justice to the last 17 years ago now. So I will. I mean, I am thinking about, at some point I will update it, but and maybe look for another publisher.
Okay.
Yeah, well, you've written quite a wide range of books, besides the football ones and the politics. And I mean, what do you do when you relax then? Because your mind must be so active. Do you relax? Do you watch football?
I'm not asking myself this question. I probably spend too much time thinking about politics, but I think half the nation is at the moment. I read a lot. I read history, I read biography, I read quite a bit of fiction as well. I read about football, I read about the things I'm interested in, which are the same things I write about. I do really enjoy listening to music. I listen to rock music a lot. I'm not so much of a TV watcher, but occasionally I like the occasional drama or comedy. Yes, I do find time to switch off. I probably spend too much time on Twitter. as do many people, get involved in political debate.
Yeah.
The trouble is it's exponential. The more time you spend on there, the more responses you get from people, the more followers you get, the more it grows, and you just get sucked into it day
take
after
over.
day.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy it. I do enjoy it, as well as the political debate, and probably a lot of my Twitter is political debate and getting wound up like Tories. I just enjoy the randomness of making connections with people and finding little bits of trivia and photos from the other side of the world, or just things that you wouldn't necessarily encounter in your normal day.
Well, you certainly attracted a lot of likes on Twitter, or a lot of followers anyway, so it must work.
Definitely.
Well, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I should broadcast over. I've got 29,000, which is quite a nice surprise.
Yeah.
It's strange. I've been on Twitter for 11 years, and it sort of gradually built over many years, and it's been the last 3 years it's just exploded. So I think a lot of it, hopefully, is I do tweet a lot about the NHS. I actually invented I invented a hashtag, which is FBNHS, which is short for Follow Back NHS. The idea is there's various FB hashtags getting people to follow people like-minded.
Yeah.
So I just suggested it one Saturday last year, and now it's become a regular thing that people will post on a Saturday with that hashtag and just information about themselves. That's
cool.
really good.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Yeah. Andrew, you've written a load of books in different subjects. Well, they're all mainly sort of referencey, sort of text, historical analysis type of books. Have you ever tried your hand in writing fiction?
I did have one go, but I try not to think about that too much because it wasn't let me have a think. I have tried a few times, but I think what I struggle with is actually creating characters and creating dialogue. I find it easier to actually deal with facts and order them. I think hopefully everybody thinks this, but I think I've got a particularly logical brain. But hopefully everybody thinks, well, I assume everybody thinks nobody's going to go around thinking I'm logical. But I've always just been fascinated by information and organising information, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the challenge of researching a factual area of interest and just sort of putting my interpretation on it and explaining it.
Okay.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about updating some of your original publications, but you touched on that with the football one. It's probably it's probably not cost effective for you to do, isn't it? So would you consider it with this Why Not Trust the Conservatives book, if you updated it in the next few months, especially with the last 6 months or so that's gone on in the Conservative world? Would you consider updating it and relaunching it?
Yeah, it's in my mind that I will do it at some point in the next few months. Have another go. Actually, I'm writing a separate political book, sorry, which I started a couple of months ago, which was what I thought was to try and do something. Because the Conservative Party book basically goes right back to 1830 and tells this whole story through. So I thought people are going to be more interested in more modern stuff. So what I thought was is do modern politics. I wasn't quite sure where to start. Actually, I put the question on Twitter and nearly everybody said start with Thatcher in 1979. So that's where I started. Yeah. So what I'm trying to do is make it the politics of our era, but in sort of bite-sized chunks that are easy to read. So the plan at the moment, and I'm dreadful for changing my mind about plans, reorganising new material, but the plan at the moment is to hop between, basically, there'll be a section for literally each calendar year from 1979 onwards, but interweaved with those calendar year narratives, there'll be little pen portraits of like prime ministers, opposition leaders, other prominent politicians, particular big issues over the last few decades, to make it sort of something that you can to sort of dip in and out of. It's just basically for someone the idea is someone who's interested in politics and wants to read a book that will sort of bring all the knowledge together. That's what the plan is. The problem I keep saying to myself is with the endless Tory merry-go-round. No Tory government minister thinks to keep the same job for more than So I've decided to write all the historic stuff first, and then in a couple of months' time or wherever, when I actually catch up with that, then I will revisit various Tory government ministers that I wrote about back in the summer that have since done different things. So, but yeah, I'm enjoying doing it. I find it really interesting to do. So, and I get a bit. It's not going to be. I'm not going to tell anybody that this is an incredibly impartial, objective thing. It's going to make quite clear where my political loyalties lie. I mean, I've just written down a list of all the subjects today, and like I've got Nigel Farage. I've written just one sentence. Nigel Farage is the most overrated politician of our era.
Yeah, yeah.
And at some point, I will actually put into biographical detail to back this up. But just sort of thoughts and phrases and ideas come to me, and gradually. I've never been one to start at the beginning of the book and work the way through. I just sort of build things up, notes, and embellish them until at the end of the day, I've got a coherent narrative that covers the whole story.
Do you find that you limit your audience by writing about a subject like the Conservatives, or for like Labour or whoever? Does that limit who's going to read it? Because people who like the Conservatives may go, "I'm not reading that trash," for example. With all due respect to your book, do you find it's a limiting factor, or not? Or do people
I suppose
anyway?
in a way, this one, although I say it's going to be, I'm going to make clear what my opinions are. It's going to look at both the Conservative and Labour governments over the last 40 years. But also I'm trying to bring in, obviously, that you've got like devolution in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. So it's going to have a variety of stuff. So I hope it will perhaps appeal to a wider audience.
Yeah.
Okay. About your writing, do you have a set writing routine? Do you write a certain amount of words per day? Have you got a target, or it's just wherever you get the muse?
I try to write every day. It's almost as though I think if I haven't done any writing today, I haven't achieved anything. But sometimes that's only like half an hour late at night. I try and write. Yeah, I try and write most days. I've been lucky enough. I've been working from home for 2.5 years. Yeah. So I've got a room here which I share with the pet parrot. It's very quiet at the moment. So I try and do a bit each day. But I try not to do too much as well, because especially like at the weekends, the thought of being on the computer for hours, having worked. I work 5 days a week full time on the computer. The thought of being on the computer all the time as well. So I do switch off and do a lot of reading and.
Yeah.
Sitting in the garden in the summer.
Yeah, it's nice to be outside.
Yeah, I was going to say, as long as you enjoy doing it, I suppose it doesn't matter how long you spend on it, as long as you're happy doing that, and you're not leaving anything else, or you're not committed to something else and you're not doing that, I suppose it's okay, isn't it? So
yeah.
We've connected on Twitter. Do you use any other social media platform for promotions or just for personal?
I've got Facebook. I think everybody's got Facebook, but I use that mostly just keeping up with family and friends. I've got a YouTube channel. I've not put any videos on there for a while. I used to, but I just find that my engagement on Twitter is so much larger than YouTube. It's just a lot easier just to put the videos direct into YouTube. Yeah. I've never tried Instagram or any of the many other. I don't think I'll be trying TikTok. That's videos for young people.
I agree. Yes, totally agree.
So I'm quite happy mostly focusing on Twitter, really. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So finally from me then, what advice would you give to a would-be writer who's going to write similar books to you? What would your advice be? What's the best way to go about it?
I would say, in terms of the actual mechanics of the writing, obviously, write about what is obvious. It's the obvious advice everybody does. Write about what you know. Do your research. Just spend a lot of time thinking about the way you're going to organise stuff. I think the most common, the most, I think, strongest advice is basically don't think I'm going to write a book, I'm going to write a bestseller, I'm going to make a fortune, because the amount of people who do that is a tiny, tiny fraction. For most, I mean, for me, I just feel I've had a bit of success, not a great deal of success. I've had quite a lot of rejections and disappointments, but I do it because I enjoy it. I do it because I find it interesting. I do enjoy the interaction with people who read my books and comment on them and stuff. It's nice that occasionally I get some good reviews. I'm not expecting to become a household name or anything. I've been doing it for 30 odd years, and if my health and my mental faculties stay the same, I quite envisage I'll be doing it for another 20 or 30 years and continuing to enjoy it. So I do find it's very rewarding. The way I look at it, it's a hobby with the occasional small payday, rather than something, as a career.
That's excellent pragmatic advice. Totally agree.
Okay.
Yeah, each to their own, isn't it? If that's what you're happy with doing. Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Brilliant. Yeah.
Well, Andrew, it's been a delight chatting with you. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
no problem. I've enjoyed it too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
we got there in the end
We did,
despite a few minor issues.